Welcome to the Creator Spotlight here on the Spotlight. I'm Steven Jensen, normally joined by Jeremy Lambert, but we're doing it just me and my guest today. Jeremy had something with his family come up, and obviously we're thinking of Jeremy, and but that said, we're happy to be here today, do an interview for y'all right here for the Spotlight. My guest today rather is the voice of New South Pro Wrestling. He's a pro wrestling commentator, ring announcer, audio engineer, stage crew, graphic designer, and undefeated against Donnie Primetime, which I'm definitely going to talk a little bit about.
It's all
My
factual.
guest today, yes, is Carmen Michael. Carmen, thank you for joining us today. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty well, man. I'm excited to be on.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you. So it was cool finally meeting you in person. I've known you like through like friends of friends through like the wrestling space, Twitter and that kind of stuff. Of course, I've known you through watching New South, especially. And you've done a lot of work with my good friend Mose, who's a friend of the show, been on here plenty of times.
Love
So
Mose.
yes, shout out to John Mosley, jumping Johnny Mosley, as Dylan Hales would say. But so this has been a long time coming, and it was good to finally meet you in person at GCW Into the Light back on 421. So yeah, I'm happy to have you, man.
That old carousel podcast you had going on there. Everyone hopping in.
Dude, that was fun. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, it initially was just going to be me and Cole Radrick, just like getting a few minutes, and then I saw you were in there, so said what's up, and then I was like,
It was Cole, Jaden,
yeah,
then me, and then I want to say Speedball, and then Brian Keith. Like it was just
Brian Keith rolled up. There was someone else there too. Scott Hensley popped up out of nowhere. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. So y'all can check that out over on FightfulSelect.com. There's been a few articles that went up through that as well over on Fightful.com. So yeah, man. So speaking of, like, how did you get involved? Like, I guess with what you're doing with ring announcing and commentating and all that stuff. Just to begin with, before you even like got in, or was New South really like your first big opportunity? Like, how did you really get into it?
So I first started with Southern Honor Wrestling. I was doing their lighting. This is back in 2019, maybe. And then the pandemic happened. I had been a fan of New South for years. I would go to a bunch of their shows, and Brandon Williams would always say, "Man, we've got to get you out. Like, you could be a big asset here. Like, I know you could help out." So I went to one of the tryouts, and I went saying like, "Hey, I just want to ring announce and help out with production, but while I'm here, I might as well, do the tryout." So I did all the exercises, ran the ropes, took some bumps, like whatever, and ended up, unbeknownst to me, tearing my quad during this.
Oh, wow.
But I ended up ring announcing for the first time the very next night
with a torn quad.
With a torn quad. I'm just thinking like, man, my leg is a lot more sore than usual. But like, I hobbled into the ring, did the pre-show, and then ended up getting blood poisoning and was in the hospital for a few days. Because I'm used to heavy workouts. Like, I'm used to being sore. I didn't think anything about it. So I'm like, okay. And it got to like day 3, and I was like, all right, something's a little off here. So I went and got everything checked out, and they like rushed me to the ER and like put me in a hospital bed and all this. I'm like, this seems a little extreme.
Dude, I had no idea about any of this.
Yes.
So this was your introductory to
working
in the world of professional wrestling.
And then I remember I got out of the hospital, and I think, I could be wrong, I think it was the next day, New South had a show in Huntsville, and I showed up like wearing a big old knee brace. I just like start wobbling up, and Donnie Primetime is just like, "What the hell are you doing here, man?" I was like, "There's a show." So I think that showed everyone like, hey, you know what? Maybe this guy does want to do this. So
yeah, proved your dedication doing all that first trips with a torn quad. That's insane, dude.
and then with commentary too, I just got thrown in on that. I was just ring announcing the pre-shows. Oh, we had a holiday show where we had a battle royal where it was a bunch of our students that were in the battle royal, and Dump Sanders, our promoter, was like, "Hey, I think I want to put you in on commentary with Mose because, you know, Mose doesn't know these kids like you do." And I was nervous as hell. And I got in there, and it, like, when I sat down, I was super nervous, but the second the match started, it just kind of flowed, and I felt like me and him had a good chemistry, like, right from the get-go.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
was a lot of fun.
I've had some off the record conversations with Mose that involved you a little bit. Like, me and him used to talk a lot because we used to do a lot of like MMA podcasting together. So we'd just be sitting there in like calls, like, you know, non-recorded, just sitting there. And during the pandemic, especially, we were doing a lot of those shows together. Your name would always come up, and you would always talk about how enthusiastic you were. And also, if I remember correctly, you were very into Rhino's appearances.
No, it was Shark Boy.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay, my bad. Okay,
It started as a gag because at the time I had a podcast where two of my friends had never watched TNA before, and they had just started watching because Kenny Omega came over and was challenging for the title.
Right.
Which that was all weird too, because I ended up working for Impact, the show that he won the title, and like all that. But we started a podcast where I was basically showing them all the old TNA stuff. And it became like a recurring like gag on the podcast where, you know, Shark Boy would come out, he would lose to Abyss, he would lose to Monty Brown, he'd lose. And it's basically like a gag, like, "Oh, come on, Shark Boy, I thought this was your time." So we ended up putting out a tweet one year at Haas that Shark Boy saw, and then he messaged New South. He's like, "Hey, so y'all want to bring me in?" So he ended up coming in. So like we just continued the bid. I wore a Shark Boy mask on commentary. It was
that's
ridiculous.
Right. That's
awesome. It was absolutely ridiculous in the best way possible.
I was getting that confused because Rhino was wrestling for New South around that time, though. Yes, that's why I was getting that confused there. And that totally makes sense. So speak a little bit more on the Impact appearance.
So with Impact, this was still during the pandemic. At the time, they were doing virtual meet and greets for their pay-per-views, for their VIP, since obviously couldn't have fans in attendance. So I was asked to provide audio for their virtual meet and greet. So I brought some wireless microphones, and I, you know, sat there, monitored the levels during it and all that. And while I was there, I helped out with the ring crew and had a great experience. Was there for a few days. Ended up a couple of us on the ring crew stepped out and we're watching the Kenny Omega Rich Swann match. And Scott D'Amore just walks up and he's like, he looks back and said, "You guys ready to be on pay-per-view?" And we're like, "Huh?" And next thing I know, there's just a camera pointing at us. So we're all just sitting there watching the match, camera right in our face, trying to pretend like it's not there.
Oh man, that's so cool. Did you have a background like in because I know, you know, with you being like it's like audio engineer and graphic design and that kind of stuff, were you doing that kind of stuff pre-pro wrestling and it's just kind of worked out to where it's like a good space to be able to do all these things?
So I was originally a vocalist in a band that toured around, band here in Alabama called Throne of Eden. We released an album, like we toured around, got to play with Sister Hazel, Saving Abel, like a couple bands like that.
Nice.
Shallow Side, I know they're doing some great things right now. Got to play with them. Went to college to originally learn how to record, and I ended up loving live audio a lot more. So I was working in live audio, working as a stagehand. Oh Lord, I've worked local crew for everyone from Slipknot to Rolling Stones, Dave Matthews Band, obviously like WWE, AEW. So I was doing that beforehand and running audio. And then that's what got me into Southern Honor, helping with lights, which kind of snowballed into me helping out with New South. And now at New South, I mean, I set up all the production, I ring announce, I commentate, I do all the graphics, I edit all the entrance videos. Like, so it's snowballed rather quickly.
That's wild. So what's it like having what's the experience been like working for New South in all those capacities? Because I know it's Dump Sanders and it's Cabana Man Dan, right? Is
Dump Sanders and Brandon Williams.
Okay, Locksmith. Okay, gotcha. So how is it like working for those two guys? And I mean, obviously they've given you a lot of responsibilities.
Man, it has been absolutely great. I love New South. I mean, I'm wearing the shirt right now. I New South was something that I remember as a fan coming to watch, and I'm like, okay, like this is a lot different than the other independents here in Alabama. And that's not throwing shade on anyone, but like when I was going to New South as a fan, I mean, you had people like Austin Theory there and Baron Black and Odinson, like all these names that have gone on to, I joke around on commentary sometimes, whatever happened to that Austin Theory guy?
Sure.
So, seeing all the production, seeing the video packages that Chris McInnes would put together, who used to be with New South, always did excellent work. Seeing all this, and I'm just like, so wait, like you can have wrestling that's not just like in a middle school gym with like a bunch of guys with beer bellies. Like this is cool. So I've always gone to bat for New South, and then once I became a part of it, they just welcomed me in like family. And over the years, people have left, and I've ended up taking up more responsibilities as it's gone on, and now I'm taking more of a behind the scenes aspect as well as on camera. So I love it. It's my baby.
Yeah, that's very, very cool. So I know you have a background now in everything leading up to like joining New South and with audio and live audio and all that stuff. When did you become an actual wrestling fan? Was it like a fandom since like a long, like way back, or?
So my grandma used to tell me, God bless her soul, she said the only way I would ever sit still as a baby would be when wrestling was on the TV.
Okay.
And like I immediately gravitated towards Sting. He had the blonde flat top, he had the colorful face paint. So apparently since I was literally a baby, Sting's been my favorite wrestler. And growing up, that never changed. I've got to work with him a few times now. It was the weirdest thing at AEW in Nashville. I ended up getting put on the show call working as a stagehand, but I was on show call for it. And like, obviously I got like a bunch of friends that work there. They're coming up and talking to me. We're all standing around watching, I think it was Thunder Rosa and Mercedes Martinez, perhaps, in a hardcore match. We're all watching on the monitor. And then here comes Sting, full face paint, stands right next to me. We both look at each other, nod, and both standing there like arms crossed watching the match. And in my head, I'm thinking like, I was you literally every year for Halloween. Like, not like I was you occasionally, like every single year I was Sting.
Did it evolve from like the colored face paint to like the black and white to the red and black?
It did. It's awesome, man.
I love that. Yeah. So is it safe to say you were more of like a WCW kid than WWF kid?
I was not allowed to watch WWF. I was told it was absolute filth and I was not supposed to watch it. So instead, I got to watch the NWO and all the cruiserweights, which huge fan of the cruiserweights, and ended up working recently with Juventud Guerrera. And then later this year, I'm working a show that not only has Hoovy, but also has Psychosis, which is like mind-blowing to me.
Yes.
I was explaining to the promoter, I'm not going to give away like what matches are happening or whatever, but I was like, the fact that you have both of these two people on this show, when like growing up, my brother and I would play Nintendo 64. We'd always play WCW NWO Revenge.
Yes.
Always be a tag team, and we would always be Juventud and Psychosis. And I'm like, dude, this is perfect.
Dude, that's awesome. I can kind of relate a little bit with that, where I've done a little bit of commentary, not much, but I've done a little bit for Championship District Wrestling, CDW, here in Atlanta. Jameson Ryan and Diamond Sheik and those guys. And they, Jameson just straight up asked me, he was like, hey, do you have any like preferred people you'd want to commentate for? I said Ashley Dimbois, because I could see that she was going to be a massive star. Awesome. And I was like, if I can call a match now, I probably won't have another chance because she's going to be signed. And I said, the cat Ernest Miller is going to be on your show. I said that's like, I don't even care what he's doing, but like anything that involves the cat, because I'm such a WCW mark that like, I'm just like you, where I was like, I have an opportunity to call, because dude, I've got like, I just happen to have this sitting here. I've got like a signed Glacier mask over here in my office. You can barely see the signature, but like This guy, he signs it "Stay Cool" Glacier. I was like, this guy rules.
Of course he does.
Yeah,
he has to.
He happened to be the lacrosse coach at my high school when I was growing up. Like, it's the most small world thing ever. So I knew him as Glacier, as a WCW mark, and then I'd see him walking around school as Coach Lloyd, and I'd just try not to mark out.
I was about to say, I imagine there's a lot of that in the Georgia area. Just there's a lot of wrestlers there.
Yeah, well, so the people who watch this show are probably sick of hearing me talk about it, especially because of how prevalent he is currently. But I went to high school with Cody Rhodes, so
I'm aware.
So when we go to these wrestling matches, like we'd have these matches, we were on the same team, and like every now and with Dusty went to all the matches, so I was always just awestruck just seeing Dusty just in general. But occasionally, like, the Steiner Bros would pop in, or like DDP would be there, and it'd just be like, I have to wrestle in front of Diamond Dallas Page. Like, oh my god, dude, no way.
This is your tryout.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing
don't mess up. You can be signed by WCW.
The funny thing is, I've heard Xavier Woods talk about that on podcasts before with Chris Jericho and Cody, where he was talking about how, because him and Cody wrestled in high school, and that was his big thing, was he knew Dusty was going to be there. If I can beat Dusty's kid in front of Dusty, then Dusty's going to have to recommend me to the WWE, and then I can get a job, wrestling for the WWE one day. So
that's that go on, and
yes, all the connections.
This is my shot.
Yes, so that is true though. It was one of those things where, like, especially the Atlanta airport. That was the first time I met Kevin Nash, the first wrestler I ever met. In the Atlanta airport. I still have the autographs behind me and this white thing over here. Oh yeah, he's the man. So like, we had a neighbor who like did like the curtains in the house of Sting, because he was like local, and just random stuff like that. But that's enough about that. That's funny though. All the connections there with all that, and the WCW thing. Like, so who were kind of like, so Sting, I get that. Like, there's a lot of us who, for me, it was the Macho Man Randy Savage in WCW. I was also a WCW kid over WWF. I know Sean Ross Sapp here at Fightful, he talks about it often. Sting, like, he saw Sting for the first time, got hooked on wrestling. Who else would you consider to be like a really big fan of? I know you mentioned some of the cruiserweights. I was a big cruiserweight fan as well. Who are some of your other guys?
So watching WCW is weird. Like, even as a kid, I was into the mid card. Like, I was really into Raven, Saturn, the man whose name I'm not supposed to say.
Of course, sure.
Obviously all the cruiserweights. Like, I loved all the Lucha Libre. And then Chris Jericho was a huge one, which I've had the pleasure of working with him and his band quite a few times. I absolutely love Chris. Do
you have any stories about that? Because in my opinion, Chris Jericho is the GOAT. I think he's the best of all time, personally. And I can only imagine what it's like working a Fozzy show.
So I did a couple music videos with him. I did Nowhere to Run and Burn Me Out. And Burn Me Out was the first one where I'm like, what the hell is my life? Because I remember he walked in, and he was just like carrying a bag of Subway, and I'm just like, oh man, I didn't know there's a Subway around here. He's like, yeah, man, it's right down the street. Like, here's how you get to it. And he just walked off, and I'm thinking, like, what the hell is my life? And then like the next music video, I walked in, he's like, hey Carmen, what's up? And then we sat down and ate Chipotle and talked about Metallica. Like, and I ran into him at AEW in Nashville, and I was telling some of the stagehands I work with, like, oh yeah, like, I got some friends that work here, and they're all like, yeah, okay. And then when Jericho walked by, he stopped, he turned around and said, dude, what's up? And like dabbed me up, and I looked back, and all the stagehands are just like, what? I love it.
That's so awesome. Yeah, Jericho's the man.
That's crazy. Like, top 3 favorite wrestlers of all time: Sting, CM Punk, Jericho. And I've got to work with all 3 of them. And it's just like, it's just strange to me, like, how quickly things have like turned in here. I've only been working in wrestling really full time for 3 years. Like, already getting to do that. Like, that's wild to me.
And it sounds like you've had, not that I would want you to have to like air this out if you didn't, but it sounds like you've had generally good experiences with like all these heroes of yours, which is like even better.
Never had a bad experience with any of them. I think I can, it's not released yet, but there's a certain TV show coming out, Heels season 2. very first day on set, is me, Braden Toon, Dylan McQueen, and then one of our trainees at New South that were all standing around. Very first person to walk up to us was CM Punk. He walks up, was like, "Good morning, guys. How y'all doing?" And like, so pleasant to work with. I've never had a bad experience with him. I know I know there's a lot of stories, but like I've never had a bad experience with him.
Yeah. So, I mean, you don't have to elaborate if you don't want to, but like, what do you have any like thoughts or opinions out like you want there as far as like him returning? Because obviously him coming back to AEW is like massive news in wrestling, and you working with them and everything. Kind of what do you feel about his big return and everything?
I'm for it. I mean, there's a lot of money on the table right now, and I'm not sure if they, I wasn't there. I don't know what happened, but I mean, if they can get past it, I feel like that's a lot of money there ready to be made. And you look at other, major sports, people get in fights in locker rooms all the time, and it's just, okay, let's deal with it and move on. So I don't know. Like I said, I wasn't there. I don't know what happened, but
sure.
I think it's a good thing bringing him back.
Okay, fair enough. There's definitely a wide range of opinions. A lot of people watching this right now know I'm not the biggest CM Punk fan, but I am wearing a t-shirt right now. I
was about to say I saw the stars.
I was gonna kind of troll and not even say anything about it to see if people picked up on it, but listen, I'm a big AEW fan. I'm a day one fan. I'm obviously a Cody guy. I followed him when he started the company.
I was literally at the first show.
There you go, double or nothing. I'm a big supporter. I'm a supporter of like all wrestling. I want everyone to succeed, but I think AEW is a really important thing in the space of wrestling, and it's something we didn't have since WCW for so long. So, I just want what's best for the company. If CM Punk coming back is what's best for the company, then I'm for it. I might have my own kind of personal things here and there that like I might not love about the guy, but I'm also not blind to what you just said. Like it's going to be big money and it's going to be super interesting. And to be fair, like the less that I know about what actually happened and the less that I know about their actual feelings toward each other is better for television. Like, it's better for me to not like I want that feeling of like if CM Punk and Kenny Omega are in the ring together, something might go bad. Something might go crazy. You know what I mean? Like
that's where the money is, man.
Yeah, it was like when Matt Hardy came back to WWE and attacked Edge, and everyone was like, "Yo, like what's gonna actually happen though?" Like so. I guess kind of how I feel about it is like I'm very interested. I'm optimistic about it. I think it's gonna be good television.
I remember being like, I think I was around 13 maybe when the whole Matt Hardy Edge thing went on. So like as a teenage boy, I'm just like, yo, what is going on? Like, this is sick, man. I was like telling all my friends, like, dude, you got to watch this. And they're like, why would I watch wrestling? And I'm like, dude, you got to watch this.
That's how I felt too. That was a lot of us. A lot of the people that are going to be in the chat watching this when this airs, like a lot of us are in that boat where we thought it was the coolest thing ever. And like no one else cared. And it was too bad that there wasn't like,
I'm like, no, you don't understand. He left, but now he's back. But we don't know, like, is he really back?
Yes. He was yelling Ring of Honor, like out loud on camera and on WWE television. What in the world?
There's like, okay, I mean, that's cool, I guess.
Good times. That was already a long time ago. There's people that are listening to this funny, what we're talking about.
Oh, that hurts my soul.
It does
so much.
Dude, there's people I interview sometimes, even I guess like I don't know if wrestlers that are young enough. I guess maybe some of them like that I've talked to. Nothing they can do about this. It just is what it is. But like they were born after WCW and ECW had folded, so like they were born after that even existed, and it's just like for me to have to put myself in that perspective, it's just a totally different point of view.
I'll see someone like Hunter Drake wrestling, and I'm just thinking like, you are so like I was already like having these experiences like before you were even born. Like this is so weird to me, man.
Speaking of Hunter Drake and just kind of like the wrestlers like on the come up right now, especially in the areas that you're involved. Who are some people? I mean, Hunter Drake's someone I've interviewed on this show. I think he's super talented. And we mentioned some others as well, the locksmith Brandon Williams. Who are some other people that you want to kind of put out there, whether they're veterans, like been around a while, or just kind of up and coming.
Man, the Southeast is like really brimming with talent right now. Like obviously Hunter Drake. I think of Braden Toon, Locksmith Brandon Williams. God, there's so many. Brogan Finley is a name that comes to mind. Like there's so many people, like not just on the New South roster, but all across the Southeast that I watch, and I'm just thinking like this is incredible. Someone like Kylie Alexa, I'll throw her out there. She's been wrestling a little over a year. And is already like signed to the NWA, is like putting on like banger matches. Like it's incredible, like the talent that are down here in the Southeast.
Yeah, I completely agree. It really feels like it's thriving, and it is wild with all the different like streaming platforms and stuff now, like IWTV and Fight and everything else is like branching off. What's New South currently on right now?
Right now, our shows are airing on YouTube.
Right.
That may not be where we're at for too much longer, but
sure, I gotcha.
But I can't say much about that right now.
That's okay. I gotcha. But I know I've noticed that that happening with quite a few promotions where it'll be like IWTV to like Fight to YouTube for a minute to back to one of the streaming platforms. So
New South and MLW have just been like following each other around.
So. Yes, exactly. But I'm all for like, I want all the platforms to succeed. I want all the companies to succeed. I want the wrestlers, everyone involved, the commentators, everyone to.
I wish more people had that outlook. I know there's a lot of clicks that kind of pop up, and it's, well, I don't like these guys. I don't like these guys. I sincerely want like everyone in the Southeast to thrive. Like we all bring each other up.
Yeah. 100%. What are some other places that you want to work? I mean, I know obviously I'm sure you have like big long-term goals, but what would be some of your shorter term and maybe some of your longer term goals and in commentary, in ring announcing, really anything?
Man, I've been fortunate enough to really branch out there. So far this year, I've done 40 shows so far this year. We're only 6 months in, and that's more shows than I did the entirety of last year. And I've gotten to work with Terminus, Jonathan Gresham's promotion, Modern Grappling, Action, New South, TWE, all these places that I really love. Really trying to get out there more this year and travel around. Braden Toon and I are actually about to purchase some plane tickets here. He may have already purchased them, but to fly up to New Jersey next month. We're going to do a little loop up there in New Jersey and New York City, hopefully, and then come back down for a New South show. So looking to stay busy, but just off the top of my head, promotions like Wrestling Revolver, absolutely adore their product. Love what I'm seeing there. Love to do more work with GCW. I've done some commentary and ring announcing for them. Would love to get out there more. I love what they're doing. Man, I just want to get out there on the road. I want to learn more. I want more experiences. I want to bring carloads with me. I want to, get those experiences with friends. Like, I love the Southeast. I love making those little 3-hour road trips, but it'd be nice to get out there a little bit more.
Very cool. You mentioned Terminus. I went to both of those shows as well. I think there's only been 2 so far, if I remember correctly. 3. Oh, there's right.
I was on the 3rd one.
That's right. There's been 3 tournaments. It's hard. It overlaps because I go to all the battle slams as well, and I know that's all Baron. Every time I ask, I know Jonathan, of course, with Terminus, but every time I ask Baron, I eventually just stopped asking him because I do these like quick, similar to GCW after Battle Slam. I go around and get some audio, and I always do an interview with Baron after the Battle Slam shows, and I eventually just stopped asking him because I was like, I'd always ask, so when's the next Terminus?
I want to know the same thing.
and he always says, news is coming soon. And it's been like 6 months since the last time that he had any news. So I'm hoping.
I remember he hit me with the, hey man, do you want to be our official ring announcer? I'm like, yes, absolutely. And I was like, when's the next show? He said, we're working on it.
Yes. Dude, they got a big task ahead. They're doing the Juneteenth, like the whole weekend in Centennial Park, which is going to be interesting. Man. I don't know like what hours they're running or exactly how that's going to work yet. Because what I'm assuming, I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming it'll be like outdoors or like a part of like the big like festival and everything going on out there. But I'm hoping to get out there at least one of the days. I know I'll have to work Friday and then Sunday is Father's Day, and that makes it tough because I'll be with family. But on Saturday, if they're running at the right time, I want to get out there and check it out because
Dude, the talent that he brings in is absolutely incredible. I remember the Terminus show I did, like it was a who's who. You know, it's the first time I worked with Ian Riccaboni and Dave Prazak, and then Konosuke Takeshita. You know, obviously John Gresham was on that show. It was stacked from top to bottom, man.
Yeah, good stuff. We were talking a little bit before we started recording about action figures and collecting and stuff. One of the questions we ask everybody is the coolest thing in your room. Before you get to the coolest thing, because I do want to know what that is. What's your what do you collect, and like where? I have like a legitimate sickness, I believe. Like I think that like something is actually wrong with me at this point. The problem is, and I'm going to sound like a kind of, this might not come across right, but because of my shoot job and because I'm single and I live pretty like modestly.
Yeah.
I have the expendable income to just spend on dumb stuff. So like when I see,
how it was with me.
Right. So when I see stuff that I like, I just usually just buy it, but it's like this kind of stuff, like signed action figures, stuff that most people would see and be like, dude, you are just burning your money. What a waste of your time and money. How deep is it with you? And like, what are the things that you like to collect?
So originally it started off as, we did a couple of New South shows where we were bringing in some bigger names. And I was like, you know, it'd be cool to have an action figure of like Rhino, or it'd be cool to have an action figure of Shark Boy, or whoever it may be. And it started off just as a shelf of people that I've worked with. And that quickly started growing, like the more shows I was on. And eventually I was like, okay, like this is getting to be too much. Like I worked Impact. Like I'm not going to get every single person on the show. Like, do I need a Matt Cardona and this and this and this and this? So I'm like, okay. So like the bigger shows, I'll get like the main event. Like I've got a Kenny Omega and a Rich Swann, like stuff like that. It started like that. And then eventually I'd be like, oh man, that Rob Van Dam figure is really cool. Yeah. Oh man, that Jeff Hardy figure is really cool. And it got out of control quick. And I had to pump the brakes. So a few months ago, I was like, I'm spending way too much money. I collected all of the first 5 series of the AEW figures.
Yeah.
And those are locked away, like hopefully, because I mean, when are you ever going to get on the ground floor of a new promotions toy line? Like,
oh, trust me, dude. I have the whole first series signed and loose. So yeah, I'm with you 100%. Yes, I'm with you. These are investments, people. This is
exactly.
Yes,
smart financial geniuses.
Yes, stonks.
But yes. I had to pump the brakes, man. I'm like, I'm spending too much money on toys. Like they're just sitting on my shelf. Like I'm having friends come over and they're looking like, why the hell do you have so many toys? I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, this shelf is like all the people I've worked with. And what about this one? I'm like, no, I never worked with Brock Lesnar, but like, it looks cool.
Right. That's where it gets slippery. And I can tell you this from experience is when you start, because at first it's like, it starts small because it's just like, but it's all little justifications that lead to like bigger justifications. So first it starts off as like, I'm just going to collect WCW figures.
And you have to adjust the rules.
Right. WCW and WWF. Well, maybe just this era. Well, maybe just this toy line. And then before you know it, you're surrounded by action figures and your friends think you're weird. Exactly. Just like you said. So now that said, is the coolest thing in your room an action figure? Because I would like to see some of your favorite figures if you can show them or your favorite thing in your room.
Give me 10 seconds.
Oh, yes.
I'll be right back.
I will be here.
All right.
That was pretty close. That was probably right around 10 seconds for real.
I have completed my scavenger hunt.
Awesome. Let's see it.
I've got 2 things. One thing's wrestling related. The other is not.
Okay.
The first is a custom Carmen Michael ring announcing action figure.
That's dope. I love that. Who made you that?
It's actually a fan that had made the original one. I've made some adjustments to it. But this sits on my shelf with all my people I've worked with.
I love that.
It's
That's
definitely not Rusev on a Triple H body.
Dude, that's very cool. So, and you said a fan gave you that, and then you just touched it up.
So the weird thing about being, I guess, in this like public eyes, like people bring me stuff. Like people just bring me Sting stuff all the time.
That's awesome.
Action figures, stickers, keychains. Like I had a fan. This bottle that I have right here, I had a fan bring it to me on my birthday for a New South show. And just thoughtful, like bands that I listen to all over it. I'm like you pay attention to like what I'm posting online. This is cool.
Dude, that's very cool.
And speaking of music, my next thing, obviously, I've got the Linkin Park tattoo. Favorite band of all time. I got to meet Chester a few times before he passed away. And I remember I saw Linkin Park in Tampa, Florida, I believe, and was talking to Chester, and I finally was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And I gave the whole spiel like, man, you're the reason I'm a musician. You're the reason I sing. I don't care what it takes. One day I'm going to sing with you. And he just looked at me and he looked back and went, I like that. Fast forward like a month and a half, 2 months later, he came to Birmingham with Stone Temple Pilots when he was singing with them. He looks over, let's see, 6 songs in, notices me, like does a double take and like storms across the stage, leans in with the microphone, and we both sing the chorus together.
Oh, wow.
And then after the show, he like jumps down. He's like giving high fives, hugging people. And he stops at me and immediately just like grabs me. And I'm like, I'm stunned for a second. And I was like, you know, the other day in Tampa, and he just leaned back and smiled and said, I know. And he went and got me the set list.
Wow.
And got me a guitar pick.
Wow. Dude, you can't top that.
So that's the coolest thing in my room. It stays framed and on the wall. Doesn't matter what comes on and off. Also got a signed My Chemical Romance poster from my 13th birthday.
Nice.
That's different times, man. The last day of being 12 years old was at a My Chemical Romance concert by myself. Ended up winning meet and greet passes while I'm there. And I had to borrow someone's cell phone because I didn't have one of my own. Called my dad. I was like, oh, hey, by the way, I'm hanging out with the band. He's just like, okay. So,
wow.
Different times.
Wow.
But I got a poster signed by them, and like Frank, their guitarist, like wrote me this big message like for my 13th birthday and all this. So I got some cool stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. That's awesome. Man, yeah, I don't know if that can be topped. Is there anything else that you want the people to know about you before we wrap up?
Oh man, I feel like I'm pretty much an open book.
Yeah, well, let the people know where to find you. Social media. Do you have merch or anything out there?
Yes, I have a pro wrestling tee store currently. As far as social media, on Twitter and Instagram, I'm at Carmen M. Childers. For any promoters that are out there, my resume is the linked post on Twitter. So it's the first thing you see when you open up my profile. So take a look at that. Consider bringing me in a New South carload. That being said, follow New South on Twitter at @NewSouth_PW. I manage the YouTube channel, so also check that out. We got a lot of good content there, and just stay tuned. We got some big stuff coming up. We got GCW versus New South 2 on June 25th in Florence, Alabama. Tickets are available now. I know so far they've announced the new GCW champion, Blake Christian versus Locksmith Brandon Williams. Then also Rena and Sawyer versus Kinsey Page and Kylie Alexa. So, and we got some more bangers to be announced soon. But
yes, very much looking forward to all that. And we will have links in the description that y'all can see below to go support Carmen. Carmen, thank you again for joining me on the show today.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it so much.
Man, we appreciate it as well here at Fightful. Thank you guys very much for watching, and we'll be right back here on the Spotlight. Now I have to figure out how to end the recording without